Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The contract hit the mahogany desk with the sound of a guillotine blade dropping, final and terrifying. Read it. Sign it. Then forget you ever knew the name Noah. The voice was a low, velvet baritone that could command the tides, currently echoing off the cold glass walls of a 50th-story office in downtown Seoul. But for Lucien, that voice didn't belong to the impeccably dressed titan of industry standing before him, backlit by the city skyline like a vengeful god. That voice belonged to the dark, shivering warmth that had pressed against his back only 6 hours ago in a cramped, radiator-hissing apartment in the suburbs. It belonged to the man who had paid his tuition in exchange for being held, the man who claimed the sound of Lucien's heartbeat was the only thing that kept the nightmares at bay. Lucien stared at the man he knew as his roommate, Noah, now revealed as Alistair Thorne, the ruthless CEO of Thorne Dynamics. The betrayal didn't taste like ash. It tasted like blood. "You're firing me before I even start my first day?" Lucien asked, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a rising, incandescent fury. "And you're evicting yourself from our apartment? What was the last 6 months, Alistair?" "Market research on how the poor live." Alistair didn't flinch. His eyes, usually soft and clouded with exhaustion in the dim light of their shared bedroom, were now sharp shards of obsidian. "It was a transaction, Lucien. You needed money. I needed sleep. The transaction is concluded. This severance package is generous. It will buy you a house. A real one." Lucien looked at the check. It was enough to buy 10 houses. He picked it up, the paper crisp under his calloused, paint-stained fingers, and slowly tore it into halves, then quarters. He let the confetti rain down onto the polished floor. "I didn't hold a check at night," Lucien whispered, stepping closer, ignoring the way Alistair's jaw tightened. "I held you." To understand the shattered glass of the present, one had to look at the desperate mosaic of the past. 6 months ago, Lucien was a drowning art student, suffocating under the weight of loans and the pressure of a portfolio review that would determine his future. He was 2 weeks away from living in his car when he found the advertisement on a niche, anonymous forum. Wanted, nighttime companion, non-sexual. Requirements, quiet, warm body temperature, steady heart rate. Purpose, insomnia relief. Payment, $2,000 weekly. It sounded like a scam, or worse, a setup for a horror movie. But desperation is a powerful editor of common sense. Lucien answered. He met Noah in a coffee shop. Noah wore oversized hoodies, thick-rimmed glasses that obscured half his face, and he smelled of sterile soap and old paper. He looked like a grad student burned out by a thesis. He looked harmless. The arrangement was simple. Noah moved into the spare room of Lucien's drafty apartment. Every night at 11 p.m., Lucien would go into Noah's room. They would lie on the bed. Lucien would wrap his arms around Noah. Big spoon, little spoon, it varied, and just exist. For the first month, they didn't speak. Lucien simply acted as a human anchor for a man who seemed to be drifting away into madness. He learned the topography of Noah's tension. He learned that Noah flinched at the sound of sirens. He learned that Noah's body temperature ran dangerously cold, like a lizard sunning on a rock, soaking up Lucien's heat with a greed that felt borderline starvation. By the 3rd month, the silence broke. "Why do you paint?" Noah had asked into the darkness, his head resting on Lucien's chest. "Because words are liars," Lucien had murmured, sleep-drunk and unguarded. "Colors don't have agendas. Red is red. It doesn't pretend to be blue to get something from you." Noah had tightened his grip on Lucien's arm. "Everyone wants something, Lucien. Even you." "I just want to be known," Lucien confessed, a secret he hadn't told anyone. "To be seen, not for what I can produce, but for who I am." "That is a dangerous wish," Noah whispered. "To be known is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable is to be destroyed." Despite the cynicism, they grew closer. It was a strange, hothouse intimacy, cultivated in the dark and cut off from the rest of the world. Noah became Lucien's muse, though he never let Lucien sketch him. In return, Lucien became Noah's sanctuary. The money appeared in Lucien's account every Friday, but soon Lucien stopped checking. He started rushing home not for the paycheck, but because he knew Noah would be waiting, shaking with exhaustion, needing to be held together. Then came the job application. Lucien needed an internship for his degree credits. He applied to Thorn Dynamics, the leading architectural firm in the city, known for its brutalist, avant-garde designs. He got the interview. He got the job. He rushed home to tell Noah. "I got it." Lucien had cheered, bursting into the apartment with a bottle of cheap champagne. Junior design associate at Thorn Dynamics. Noah had stood in the kitchen, his back to Lucien, freezing in a way that should have been a warning. "Thorn Dynamics," Noah repeated, his voice hollow. "You shouldn't go there, Lucien. The corporate culture. It eats people like you." "I can handle it," Lucien laughed, wrapping his arms around Noah's waist from behind, resting his chin on the man's shoulder. "I have a secret weapon. I have the best sleep of my life because I have the world's best pillow." Noah stiffened, then slowly pulled away. "Don't get attached to the job, Lucien. Nothing lasts." The next morning, Noah was gone before Lucien woke up. And 3 hours later, Lucien was standing in the boardroom of Thorn Dynamics, staring at the CEO. Gone were the hoodie and the glasses. Alistair Thorn wore a 3-piece suit that cost more than Lucien's entire education. His hair was slicked back, revealing sharp, aristocratic features and eyes that were cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of the vulnerability Noah had shown. But the way he held his pen, tight, white-knuckled, was exactly how Noah held the bedsheets during a nightmare. Now, in the office, the silence following Lucien's defiance was deafening. Alistair looked at the torn check on the floor. "You are insolent. And you are a liar," Lucien countered. He took a step forward, invading the personal space of the most powerful man in the city. "Why the charade? Why the rundown apartment? Why Noah?" Alistair walked to the window, looking down at the ants scurrying on the pavement below. "Do you know what it is to be Alistair Thorn? To be the head of a dynasty since you were 22? I have been kidnapped twice. I have been sued 300 times. I have people who smile at me while calculating how much my death would spike the stock prices." He turned back, his silhouette imposing. "I cannot sleep in my own home, Lucien. It feels like a mausoleum. Feels like a cage. The silence there is full of knives. I need it. Somewhere I didn't exist. Somewhere I was just a body needing rest. Noah was a fiction, a necessity for survival. And me?" Lucien asked, his voice cracking. "Was I a fiction too? Was the way you held on to me like I was the only solid thing in the universe a lie?" Alistair's mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second. A spasm of pain crossed his face before the marble facade slammed back down. "You were a service provider, an excellent one, but now you are an employee, and I cannot have an employee who knows I am human. So you fire me." "I am protecting you," Alistair snapped, the volume rising for the first time. "If my board finds out, if my enemies find out that I spent 6 months sleeping in the arms of a student in a slum, they will destroy you to get to me. They will use you as leverage. I am cutting you loose before you bleed." "I don't care about your enemies," Lucien said stubbornly. "You should," Alistair roared, slamming his hand against the glass. "You are soft, Lucien. You paint with colors and believe in truth. You would be eaten alive in my world." "Then teach me," Lucien challenged. "Keep me, not as a secret, not as a paid cuddle buddy. Keep me here as an architect. Let me prove I can handle your world." Alistair stared at him, stunned by the audacity. "You want to stay? Knowing I deceived you? Knowing I am this monster?" "I know you're not a monster," Lucien said softly. "I know you're just a man who's afraid of the dark. And I know that I'm the only one who can keep the lights on for you." Alistair looked at him for a long, agonizing minute. The air between them crackled with 6 months of shared breath and silent comfort. Finally, Alistair went to his desk and pressed a button on the intercom. "Cancel the security escort," he said, his voice flat. "Mr. Vance is staying." He looked up at Lucian. "Get to your desk. You're on probation. If you make one mistake, if you falter, you are gone. And Noah does not exist here. Do you understand? I am Mr. Thorne." Lucian nodded, a fire lighting in his chest. "Yes, Mr. Thorne." The weeks that followed were a brutal lesson in duality. By day, Alistair was a tyrant. He criticized Lucian's drafts with surgical cruelty. He made Lucian work late, fetching coffee, organizing files, revising blueprints until Lucian's eyes burned. He was cold, distant, and utterly professional. But the dynamic had shifted. Lucian wasn't cowed. He took the criticism. He improved. He learned to navigate the shark tank of the office politics. He saw the way others looked at Alistair with fear and awe, and he felt a secret, thrilling power. "I know what he looks like when he dreams," Lucian thought during a heated board meeting. "I know the sound of his breathing when he finally lets go." The breaking point came 2 months later, during the worst thunderstorm of the decade. The city was battered by rain, and the power grid flickered. Lucian was the last one in the design studio, working on a render for the new Opera House project. The lights in the building surged and died, plunging the skyscraper into darkness, save for the red glow of emergency exit signs. Lucian grabbed his phone and headed for the executive suite. He knew. He found Alistair huddled in the corner of his vast office, illuminated only by the lightning flashes tearing through the sky. The great CEO was gone. Noah was back. He was shaking, his hands pressed over his ears, his breathing ragged and hyperventilating. "Alistair," Lucian said, his voice firm but gentle. Alistair looked up, eyes wide and unseeing. "They're coming," he muttered. "The lights. The dark." Lucian didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees and pulled Alistair into his arms. It was awkward. The expensive suit was stiff, the floor was hard. But the moment their bodies touched, the circuit completed. "I've got you," Lucian whispered, rocking him slightly. "I'm here. It's just rain. It's just noise." Alistair buried his face in Lucian's neck, inhaling sharply. He clung to Lucian with a desperation that transcended the employee-employer boundary. He gripped Lucian's shirt as if he were falling off a cliff. "Don't leave," Alistair choked out. "Lucian, don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Lucian promised. He ran his hand through Alistair's gelled hair, messing it up, bringing back the softness of the man he loved. Yes, loved. The realization hit Lucian with the force of the thunder outside. He didn't just pity Alistair. He didn't just want to comfort him. He loved the complexity, the fracture, the man who built towers to touch the sky but was afraid of the dark. They stayed like that for an hour, until the storm passed and the generator kicked in fully. The lights buzzed back on, harsh and fluorescent. Alistair pulled away slowly. He looked disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked at Lucian, and for the first time in the office, there was no mask. "You saw me," Alistair said, his voice raspy. "I've always seen you," Lucian replied. Alistair stood up on shaky legs, offering a hand to Lucian. Lucian took it, expecting to be dismissed, expecting the walls to go back up. Instead, Alistair pulled him up and didn't let go. He stared at Lucian's mouth, his gaze dropping, darkening. The hunger that had been suppressed for months, the intimacy that had been strictly platonic, suddenly ignited into something volatile. "The contract?" Alistair murmured, stepping closer, crowding Lucian against the glass wall. It specified non-sexual intimacy. Lucian's heart hammered against his ribs. "The contract is void. You fired Noah's roommate. You hired Lucian Vance." "And Lucian Vance," Alistair whispered, his hand coming up to cup Lucian's jaw, his thumb tracing the line of his lower lip, "is proving to be a liability to my self-control." "Good," Lucian breathed. Alistair kissed him. It wasn't the gentle, tentative touch of a roommate. It was the claiming of a king. It was possessive, starving, and devastating. Alistair kissed him like he was trying to breathe him in, to replace the oxygen in his lungs with Lucien's essence. He tasted of coffee and repressed desire. Lucien melted into it, his hands tangling in Alistair's hair, pulling him deeper. The power dynamic flipped and twisted. The boss was begging, the employee was granting salvation. When they finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, Alistair rested his forehead against Lucien's. "I can't go back to the apartment," Alistair said quietly. "It's compromised." "I know," Lucien said. "Move in with me," Alistair said. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. "Into the penthouse. The mausoleum. Make it a home. I can't sleep without you. I don't want to live without you." Lucien smiled, brushing a thumb over Alistair's swollen lips. "On one condition." Alistair raised an eyebrow, a glimmer of his arrogance returning. "You're negotiating with the CEO?" "Always," Lucien said. "No more payments. No more transactions. If I come home with you, it's because we're partners. Equals. In the bedroom and eventually out there." He gestured to the city. Alistair looked at Lucien, really looked at him, and saw the steel beneath the softness. He saw the artist who understood that structure required balance. "Deal," Alistair said. He straightened his tie, but kept his other hand firmly interlaced with Lucien's. "Now get your things. We're going home." And that is how the artist painted a soul back into the tyrant. If you enjoyed seeing Lucien take control of the man who controls everything else, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you forgive a lover who lied about their identity for 6 months if their reason was trauma? Or is a lie always a deal breaker? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.